Hello, everyone. This is Winfred Crutcher. It's my pleasure to see you guys, I guess, in the sense of the word. It's my pleasure to come before you again with another, I really think, very helpful topics of discussion. We're still in our savings, expenses, and budget format, and we really appreciate you, those of you that have subscribed, those of you that have liked our presentations, and we really ask you, if you would, to just to continue to subscribe, continue to like, and also to share with others about this most pertinent information that we're putting forward to help make your finance easy. It's our desire and our goal and our passion is to make your financial life have a great deal of stability in it. And that's the goal of our channel. It's all about financial literacy, all about financial education, advice on certain matters as it relates to attaining the goals in life that you would like to attain. And we want to bring value to your life. And so we thank you again for coming in and tuning in with us today. And we're going to get started. We talked about last time we was on that we was going to continue with part two. And with part two, we're talking about identifying and reducing your expenses. A lot of times we have expenses and that we don't have any kind of identification to them. So therefore, we don't really realize how much they kind of dragging our budget down or dragging our lifestyle down. So we're going to talk about this in the next upcoming video. So thank you, and hopefully that you have your family members with you. Hopefully that you have your children with you, because this is something that we wanted to become, has a generational effect on you, because financial stability is one of the best things that you could have as it relates to going forward and attaining your goals, whether it's education, buying a home, or renting a home, or a number of things you might want to do. So we want you to really listen close and take time to write down with pen and paper some of the things we're going to talk about, because it would be, I believe truly, that it would be very beneficial to you. Thank you. Okay, let's look at expense types here. First, you have the fixed expense, which is same payment amount every month. Then you have your periodic expenses. They're scheduled payments, outside monthly payments, and they're routine payments. Then you have your variable expenses. They're routine expenses that are different each time you pay. Okay, fixed expenses. Let's look at that closely. Payments remain the same month to month. Therefore, that's why they're called fixed. They remain the same. We have some examples here. Rent and mortgage primarily remains the same. Car payment, insurance premiums, monthly gym memberships. I was chuckling a little bit when I first saw the monthly gym membership. I guess that may be a expense that a number of us probably might need to have, but nevertheless, that's something also that is fixed and don't change. And so it just kind of encourages us also to go to the gym and become better health symbols of ourselves. And fixed expenses also are easy to track and include in your budget. You have no problem tracking fixed expense because you know that they're going to be the same monthly, weekly, annually. Then we have periodic expenses, excuse me. They are payable at intervals other than monthly. So you see the difference there. Example, car registration. And we know with car registration, that's something that we do mainly on a yearly basis. Where I live, it's a yearly basis. And then I'm sure some states or cities that is done on an annually basis, or quarterly basis. But nevertheless, this is a periodic expense. And it has a great suggestion here is to not only periodic expenses, but all our expenses. Plan for periodic expenses by budgeting toward the expense. For example, if you know you have a car registration coming up and you know how much it's probably going to be or has been in 40 years, might be just a little different, you might want to just go ahead and set that to the side initially at the beginning of the year and you have that already out of the way. So periodic expenses also are not very hard to budget for. Then you might want to calculate how much to save money for each periodic expense. You know, if you got something that's $200 a periodic expense, you know, you might want to earmark $20 a month, or however much you might want to do that. So this is one of the ways that you can prepare yourself for periodic expenses. Remember, periodic expenses are payable at intervals other than monthly. Then we have variable expenses. Routine expenses that vary in amount each month. Let's look at some examples here. Grocery, eating out, entertainment, personal care. We know that with groceries, we don't buy the same amount of groceries every week. There's sometimes we might need this item, sometimes we might need that item. So that's a variable expense. Eating out, you might eat at this restaurant, maybe next week you might eat at a fast food restaurant. So you know that these things are variable, and they're expenses that vary in amount each month. So these are not periodic, neither are they fixed. Tips to keep variable expenses under control, and they can get away from you. Eating out and entertainment can get away from you if you don't keep it under control. Maybe you might want to open a separate checking account with a set amount to spend on variable expenses. And setting a set amount is very important, not only for variable expenses, just about for any expense. Just a certain amount, I'm going to spend this amount, and I'm not going over. And so that would help you to stay on track with your budget. And then you might want to track your spending using a spreadsheet or a mobile app. Excuse me. And then you have the question that is with all expenses actually is, do I really need this expense? Then if the answer is no, then it's something you might want to sell, you might want to cancel, you just might want to stop having altogether. Then if yes, then is there a way you can reduce this expense? Is there a way you can negotiate maybe for a lower amount? Is there a way you can manage it better or transfer this expense? So if you do need them, check out these 4 suggestions here: reduce, negotiate, transfer, or manage. Okay. Evaluate expenses and options. Let's look at reduced again. You're going to ask yourself, how often do I incur this expense? Can I cut back? And that, again, should be a question on everything that we maybe spend funds on or whatever. Do I have to have it? Can I cut back? Is there a way that I can negotiate? Can I get a better deal? You know, this sometimes happens with apartment renting, or sometimes happens with automobiles. A lot of times if you have good footing, you can negotiate. If you've been a good tenant prior to renting an apartment, you can negotiate. And then sometimes you can transfer these expenses. Can I lower expenses by switching to service providers? There's a lot of, we all have different cell phones, companies that we deal with. Maybe we want to offer a better deal. So it's just something you might want to look at. And then you might not have been managing these accounts, these expenses, as well as you could have. So you might want to ask yourself a question: can I manage this much better to make it more effectively? Can I manage it to the point that it's not tearing up my budget? We talked about rent negotiation. Excuse me, please. One thing you might want to do, you might want to research rents in your area. Sometimes we have a certain type of townhouse, a certain type of apartment, in a certain type of area that we want to live in, and sometimes we can find this in other areas with maybe the cost is a little bit minimum. And say you be a no-hassle tenant. Talked about that. It's kind of hard to negotiate with your landlord or with your individual that you're getting ready to try to rent with now if your record has been pretty bad. If you've caused problems at your last apartment or townhouse, it's going to be kind of difficult to negotiate a lower rent or a better arrangement for yourself. This is a good one. Sometimes if you offer multiple months rent up front, sometimes the landlord or the house owner or whoever that is involved with this transaction will lower the rates. They will say, hey, okay, I'm getting this money up front, so I can knock out $10 or $15 because I know that I'm going to already have this. Then you might want to opt out of shared amenities. This is something that sometimes, like you might be in an apartment complex or rental property, and then you're sharing the laundry room with someone. You're sharing the swimming pool and all these type of things. And a lot of times you incur costs with this. So if you can maybe say, well, I can go on my own and wash my clothing, and I could cut this little bit of charge out of my rent fee every month, that would be very helpful. So that's something you might want to look at about opting out of shared amenities. Be clear that you're ready to move out. Now, if you're on a good footing and you're renting already there and you want to negotiate, if you're on a good footing, you could do this. But as we previously stated, if you have not been a no-hassle tenant, it's kind of hard to offer your landlord, say, hey, I'm getting ready to move out. And so you can't get how to give an ultimatum when you don't have grounds to stand on. Also, when you start talking like this, and if you decide to do, you better make sure that you have a place to go to, because you don't want to talk yourself into a problem that would be hard for you to fix. Okay, and a lot of individuals does this. So offer your landlord something in exchange. I've known people, I guess, say that, okay, I paint the house for you, I paint the apartment, I keep the grass cut in change for a lower monthly rental fee. So this is something you might also want to look at and say, you know, hey, I want to do this, and hopefully that'll help me reduce my rent payment. And believe it or not, a lot of landlords, a lot of homeowners, rentals will go along with this. So all of these are something to look at as it relates to rent negotiation. And set appropriate expectations. We don't want to be too outlandish in our negotiating and trying to maybe get something that's a little bit outlandish, a little bit far out there. So set appropriate expectations. Now we want to talk about home ownership expenses. And our desires that every American own their home, and this is part of the budget format. This is part of our literacy and financial education training. It's not just to give you knowledge, but we want you to act on that knowledge. And believe it or not, if you act on some of the things that we're talking about in this video, you're going to find out it's going to expedite the time that you have to become a homeowner. So when you do become that, we want to help you to reduce your home ownership expenses. Okay, your mortgage. Sometimes your mortgage might be a little high, so you might want to refinance your loan. Now we're really behind that, but one thing about refinancing your loan, look closely at the fine print and everything. And also, if you refinance it, I would encourage you, if you free up a couple $100 a month or something like that, instead of spending it, if you're not going to save it, pay down your high interest loans or something like that. So always put your money to use to help you further your goal. Then you might want to look at property tax. We're talking about reducing home ownership expenses. You might need to consider an updated appraiser. Maybe appraiser is giving you lowballing you, or maybe it's highballing you. So these are some of the things you want to look at, because the property taxes can be astronomical in cost and in fees. Then we're looking at maintenance. Preventive maintenance can save money long term. I'm an old soldier, you know. One thing that I learned in the military is that we would always practice preventive maintenance, because if we ever have to, you know, move out or do something that is needful in protection of our country or whatever, we wanted to make sure that our equipment was really on par prior to us moving. So even with your homes, you might want to look at, make sure your roofing is done right, make sure everything is sealed up. So all this can save you money in the long term. If there's air seepage in the wintertime in your home, that's going to cause the heating bill and all these things to go up. So there's always a great deal of ways you can reduce home ownership expenses. Then we have reducing utility expenses. electric, gas, water. Look for ways to reduce consumption. Explore discount options. So a lot of times we can lower our thermos, or we can, again, make sure our house is sealed, and we can understand the fact that maybe we're using too much water. It's just a number of things you can do to reduce it. And again, the more you reduce your expenses, the more funds you have, and those funds get conceivably go into savings, help pay down high interest accounts. So, and then once all those are taking place, then the things that you want and all the other things in life become more accessible and easier to attain. Let's look at cell phone. Maybe you want to buy less expensive phones. I'm probably kind of maybe going to make you a little pushback on that, but really, sometimes the phones you have, you could get the same amount of services on a more economical phone. This is very key right here. Review your bill for unnecessary services. I think at one time I looked at my cell phone services, and there were some things I was being charged for, and I was not even using it. So it's very important that you review your bill for unnecessary services. Sometimes the companies, there's a latch things on, and sometimes they assume that you know about it, and sometimes they might not assume that you know about it. They just might put them on there. And then you might want to look at prepaid or no contract plans. A lot of seniors look at this. A lot of lower income individuals, I don't have to use that terminology, look at this, just prepaid or no contract plans. And then if you get the landline, which is not very many left, but I'm sure there's a number of landlines left. You might want to look at a bundles package. Hey, okay, I got the landline. I might want to get the internet, the cable, all these things. Then you can negotiate the rates for bundle service, switch providers. So there's a lot of ways. You have to be very innovative in your mindset and how to reduce expenses. And that's what this portion of the video is all about: identifying and reducing expenses. So we want you to take in consideration all these things that we're talking about. We're going to look at the little diagram over here with the lady changing bulbs. Sometimes it's the type of bulb you use that can cause more utility use. So it's just a number of things you can look at. Now we talk about transportation expenses. We all most of us have to drive back and forth to our jobs. Everything we do here, actually in America, almost involves the use of some type of automobile. We have public service, public transportation, but most states and most cities do not have this, which is a big thing in Europe. They use a lot of public transportation. So vehicle loans. Sometimes you might want to refinance and buy a used car. You know, you can get these type of booklets and everything can tell you about the history of a car. You know, so it's a lot of ways you can reduce. And maybe after you buy the used car and take care of it, maybe at one time, once you get situated, you can buy that car of your dream. But you still want to keep it in budget perspectives, though. Pay down high interest loan. We talked about that, and we probably talk about that again. I always try to pay down the high interest loans first, because what they would do, that not only free up the amount you pay, they also free up that interest also that you can apply to the lesser interest loans. Okay. Then vehicle leases. A lot of small business owners, you know, prior to them really getting on their feet, they rent vehicles and things of that nature, because at the time they're not able to make that major down payment. They're not able to make that major monthly payment. So vehicle leases are good for small business owners. Fuel. Shop for low prices. I'm sure everybody does that. I'm sure we find ourselves sometimes going this part of the city, that part of the city, looking for the lowest fuel amount. And then a good suggestion is to keep your tires inflated. And I've heard that has a lot to do with the mileage on your tires, as well as getting a better miles per gallon out of your gasoline fuel. Okay, and then car maintenance. This is very important too. You know, with the Crutcher Finances, we want to really reach the whole gamut, the whole aspect of financial literacy and financial education. We even as simple or maybe these type of things sound, they are very beneficial. So we want to come down to the point that we want to cover every aspect of your expense life or your financial life, and to offer you the best way of doing things. So that's our goal. We want to make sure that everything is very, very good for you. So you want to stick to regular service schedule, not plugging no automobile repair service, anything like that, but getting your oil change, tune ups. All these things help you, helps your pocketbook, helps you to reduce expenses. We already talked about public transport, insurance. Sometimes you can go online and compare values and prices and get the same amount of coverage for a lower monthly premium. Okay. Now we want to reduce loan and debt expenses. Boy, it'll be a great utopia if none of us had debt in the first place. But I think roughly 77% of Americans have some form of debt or not. And so that might be virtually impossible to do to not have it in the first place. But if you do have it, we want to help you control it and also to pay down that which is taking a big chunk out of your income or your savings. Sometimes you might want to consolidate loans. But again, you want to pay close attention to this because sometimes the consolidation has a built-in certain period of time, then you might find yourself paying more interest. So you want to look at all the fine print and everything as it relates to and involved with a consolidation loan. They sound very well, very good, but you want to take a closer look at them. Okay, never go into debt to pay for living expenses. Avoid opening and canceling credit cards frequently. That's a statement within itself. Schedule regular calls with creditors and inquire about interest rate reduction. And sometimes that pays off because you might initially got a loan or something and your credit might not have been up to par, but then you worked on your credit and got everything very much under control, and you can maybe present to your creditor, hey, now I got my finances in a better shape, so what would keep me from getting an interest rate reduction? So these are some of the things you really want to look at. Okay, again, we're talking about identifying expenses. Identifying expenses, and we're showing you how to reduce a number of expenses or the number of things you have as it relates to your living standards. Reducing fees and charges. Account fees. Ask the bank to waive them. Might not get a good answer, but it's not anything wrong with asking the banks to waive some of your account fees. Credit card fees and interest. Negotiate. But most important to me is pay on time and never exceed credit limit. And that comes with the ability to control yourself and to really set priorities as it relates to your bills. And not only with credit card, but with any bill, you want to pay on time and you want to never exceed credit limit. Sometimes it happens, but we want it to become a standard practice of paying on time. This within itself is going to help your borrowing ability to be more greater than it was if you was lagging behind exceeding your credit limit. It also will keep your credit score down very low, and we want to increase our credit score because that gives us the ability to buy homes, to start businesses, all these things that we would get at a lower interest rate. Late fees. We talk about auto pay a lot. Auto pay is very good. It helps you avoid any late fees, and you won't see the money, you won't feel it physically, and it just goes out of your bank account and take care of that thing that you have to pay. So this is something that you want to look at because late fees can really pile up. They can really pile up. Overdraft fees. Explore overdraft protection. But I say monitor your accounts and budget. If you know you don't, if you really realize that you don't have this amount of money, you might not want to write this check, or you might not want to go to the bank and overdraft your account. But we realize this happens. It does happen. But if that's the case, you might want to look at overdraft protection. But we want you not to get into the mindset of this is something that I need to do, or I want to continue to do. So because overdraft fees run pretty high, I think some of the most minimum amount are $30. So you can realize if you overdraft 10 checks in 1 month, that's $300, and plus you're still going to have to pay for that check. So these are some things you want to look at as it relates to reducing fees and charges. Okay, we talked about the variable expense, the expense that neither periodic or fixed. It just kind of changes. Okay, now look at groceries. We have coupons there. There are a lot of people that still use coupons, and as rudimentary as these sound, you can save quite a bit of on groceries with these coupons. And then you have these buy in bulk stores. A lot of major stores have subsidiaries that you can buy in bulk. So that's some of the things you also might want to look. If you have a large family and your groceries bills are pretty high, you might want to look at some of these businesses where you can buy in bulk. Even your vitamins and supplements, you might want to look for generics, and you definitely want to compare labels. But at the same time, you want to also speak with your physician, your doctor, your nurse practitioner, whoever's treating you, to make sure that you can use generic, make sure that you can compare the labels, make sure that you're getting the right medication, because we still want your health to be a top priority. Okay, subscriptions. Multi-year plans often discounted. We know that. Personal care, shop sales, use beauty school apprentices. Education. A lot of us want our children to go to college, those that desire to go, whether it's a trade or whether it's a 4-year university or junior college or whatever it might be. You want to look at, to offset your education costs, you want to look at scholarships. And then there's some employers that give subsidies to your child as you work at these places. Then you want to reduce membership price and use books. There's so many ways you can reduce variable expenses. At the end of each semester, each quarter, there's individuals wanting to sell books, use books. So all these things you might want to entertain as it relates to reducing your variable personal expenses. There's always a way that you can minimize your expenses. You just have to really delve into it and look for them. And that's why we feel like we're obligated to bring you this information. Okay, we have the individuals at the gym club here. Reducing variable personal expense. Health and fitness. You might want to look at gym specials. You might want to look at generic prescription, weight for frame, and lens sales. All these ideas we just pictured out there to you that can be very beneficial to you. Kids and caregiving, coupons and memberships for activities. Coordinate. Sometimes if you have a family member that wants to take care of your kids or friends or neighbors, maybe that'll reduce that expense. But at the same time, we want to make sure your children are in good hands. We want to make sure that, so if there's a professionals that can really do this better, we want you to look at that. But we're just throwing you out some ideas that'll help you reduce variable personal expenses. And then have pets. Okay, I never thought about this one. Buy food in bulk for your pets. So I guess that's a good way also to reduce variable personal expenses. Then you have discount vaccination clinics for your dogs, your pets, who I'm sure with a lot of us is just like a part of the family. So that's a number of ways that we can reduce variable and personal expenses. And as you get going forward with this, a number of other ideas are going to present themselves to you. You hear us talk a lot about automate. Automation. Automation. I think there was a book, I can't think of the author right now, and I think it was called The Automatic Millionaire. It might not be that. It might not be the exact name of it, but it talks about how automation is very, very helpful with your budget, and it also helps to increase your savings. So we want to look at create your budget and automate, if you would. Steps in creating. Okay, we want to look at the steps in creating a budget. We have talked about this a number of times, and so again, we still want to look closely at this because there is a plan, guideline to help you to create a budget. First, you want to determine your take-home pay, home income. You know, a lot of times we work at 40 hours a week, or however many hours a week, or monthly, or sometimes we get a fixed income. You always want to determine the take-home income. You might, you might make, say you might make $600 a week, but you only bring home $450. So you want to determine your take-home income on the $450, not on your gross amount, but your net amount. Then step 2, you want to determine your savings contributions. Step 3, you want to list your fixed expenses. Well, you already know what fixed expenses are. We talked about them. Then you want to calculate your variable expenses, step number 4. Then step number 5, you want to automate payments when applicable. So this is the steps in creating the budget. And in the future, we're going to hopefully have a budget diagram or a budget printout just to kind of let you look at it. And it includes quite a few things. But that's something in the future that we're just going to look at. And because we deem that this is very, very important to really attaining your financial dreams and your financial goals. Actually, roughly 32% of Americans have a budget. So it's not a foreign thing, which is not as high as we would like for it to be, but at the same time, and I guarantee you, you can rest assured that these 32% of Americans are in a better financial shape than the rest of the 68%. So budgeting is very, very beneficial for you. And it's something that you really want to look closely at doing. So 32% can't be wrong. And I would go on record to say, I bet that their income, their stability in their lives are very, very good because they have this aspect in their financial planning. Then we've gone over this, and it always comes back because of the importance in it. Every segment of this video comes back to budgeting, and it comes back to the components. Again, we want to remind you of the components. You have the take-home pay from work, tips, any other compensation. A lot of us work in the service industry. We get tips and things like that. So we want to include that in our income. Savings. Let's set aside at least 10% of your total income. If you can't set aside 10%, at least 5%. And this will come, maybe not able to happen right now, but this will come after you start putting all these methodologies in practices. Okay? Fixed expenses. Bills you pay the same amount each month, rent, car payment, insurance. For bills you pay annually, divide by 12 to enter the monthly amount. So there's a way to do that. Then again, we talk about the variable expenses. Our bottom line is anything left over can be used to purchase wants. And I know it's hard sometimes to say, well, I want these things. But if you're just starting out, say you're a young couple, if you're just starting out, a young single person, you just started out, got your first apartment, got your first this or first that, you want excuse me, you want to put these mechanisms in place because yes, you want your wants, and and in some instances you deserve your wants. But first and foremost, you have to put a financial stability plan in place to get your finances to the point that you're able to get your wants. So we wouldn't want you to get your wants, and every other part of your financial house is built on sand. So yes, you can have your wants, but we want you to have stability first. Again, we're going over the steps 1 through 5. You will enter your income. You see the little pictures to the right, which is your total take-home pay. Step 2, you plan your savings. I already said I want you to set aside at least 10%, no less than 5%. And you can do this. You really can do this. You have to just to start doing it like everything else. You have to just start doing it. You really can do this. List fixed expenses, rent, car payment, and the such. And step 4, you again calculate your variable expenses. And step 5, set up your budget to automate and organize your finances online. There's some people still does it with the pen and paper. This step will ensure that you can accurately monitor your budget and make adjustments. Okay? Steps to setting up an automated account. First, you want to choose your financial institution and set up a checking and savings account. Believe it or not, there's a great percentage of Americans, particularly in a lot of the cities and a lot of rural areas, that don't have a checking or a saving account. Therefore, at the end of when they get the checks or whatever, the first place they go to is to pay their loan company. And one day we're going to do a little deal on that. I know they're in business, but at the same time, if you have a checking or savings account set up, you don't have to go to a lot of the payday loan individuals pay these absorbent amount of fees on borrowing money for them or getting your check cash. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the future. You might automate your bill payments. Pay yourself first by contributing to savings via automatic transfer. Then you have what's left over. Look at the diagram over here. Your employer, where you work at, they direct deposit your paycheck into your checking account. And out of your checking account come auto pay, that is all your bills, if that's the case. And then it also come out of the auto transfer into savings. So, and then after your savings, you have the auto transfers into your bank account, financial institution. So it is very, very tenable, and it's very easy to do. So this is something that you might really want to look at in automating your accounts. Then you have the third-party financial tracking system. Allows you to connect all accounts on a single dashboard, post 2 types of risk: advertising exposure, account compromise. Carefully review advertising before you buy it to ensure that the products are right for you. And that's very important. You always want to, especially if you purchase online, you always want to look at something. I've known individuals who made a purchase online, and the companies was really bogus companies. And so you want to look at the advertising. You want to try to research that company. It's a lot of things, especially when you're buying online and the company just appears out of nowhere. And you have your reputable companies, but there's a lot of companies that kind of like phishing, to get you to give them your credit card information, bank account. So you want to look at all these type of things. Then we have to verify your usernames and password between accounts to protect yourself from attackers. Some individuals have 2 or 3 different passwords and usernames. So it's just a lot of things if you're going to use a third-party financial tracking system, you want to make sure that they are reputable and that they can be researched and found out about. Because if not, you can be exposed to advertising and you can have your account compromised. Okay, we had initially was going to try to do part 2 by itself, but we kind of decided that this video maybe a little longer than the previous videos that I put out. And from time to time, we're going to have maybe longer videos, but our number one goal is really to help you. We want to bring value to your financial life. We want to make financial easier on you. We want to make your financial goals easier to attain. And we want to make your financial goals to the point that you have stability, not only right now, but in the future also, not only for you personally, but for your family. That's why it's so important, and we deem that it is, that you have your family members or your children or whoever there is to participate in watching these videos, to like, share, and to comment on it, and subscribe. So it's very important to us that we help you, and that's our number one goal, is to benefit you, because I really truly believe a part of the American dream is to have a financial stable life. So right now we're going to look at analyzing your budget and addressing the gaps. Everything always have gaps in it. So this is part 3. Thank you for continuing to listen to me, and I really appreciate you. Okay, we have your common financial health calculations. You have your housing expense ratio. You have your debt service ratio, Then you have your savings rate ratio. You want to review your budget on a regular basis, because it has many benefits. Income, expenses, and saving goals change over time. We talked about that earlier. Everything changes, so you have to be able to change with that. And so you want to check accuracy of your estimates. You know, you might have said, well, I'm earmark this type of money for this bill because this, but that might have changed. So you might want to make sure you have everything accurately as it relates to you or attaining your financial goals. Then you want to identify areas where you need to make changes. Sometimes you may need to put less towards it. Sometimes you might need to put more towards it. Sometimes you might need to just take that out of the budget altogether. And you really definitely want to know where your money is going. I was reading the studies of that, how many Americans, again, you might have heard me talk about this, don't really know at the end of the month or the end of the week where their money have gone, because there's no guidelines, no way of them tracking their money to see where it's going. And a lot of times when they find out where the money should have gone, it didn't go, but it went to a lot of wants. And so that's why we harp on, you will have your wants, but make sure you take care, have your right prioritization in mind, because we want you to become financially stable, not just barely surviving. Then it asks you to determine how much to allocate for the future. Savings rate ratio. You have the total expenses, then you have the net income. The lower your ratio, the better. It is. In other words, the lower your expenses is the best thing that you can have. Let's look at this example over here. You have the savings rate ratio. Okay. You have your monthly expenses, then you have your monthly net income. Look at this example closely. Your monthly expenses is what? $3,500. Your monthly net income is what? $4,000. So 88% of your net income are going on monthly expenses. 88% are going on monthly expenses. And this diagram right here, if you want to call it that, you only have $500 left over after you have taken care of all your monthly expenses. So this is clear cut here. These are the things we really want you to look at, because we want you to have more than just $500 or $520 at the end of the each payment period or each month. We want your expenses to be under control, to where you can have more to put back to savings and more to living your dreams. So take a close look at this. Monthly expenses was $3,500. Monthly net income was $4,000. 88.88% went to expenses. Okay? Debt service ratio. Two aspects: total debt ratio, housing expense ratio, used by lenders to qualify you for a loan. If the lender already see that your total debt prior to you even getting a housing loan, and a lot of us probably dealt with this, it's going to be very hard for you to get a housing loan when your debt ratio prior to that is very high. So lenders use this, in other words, basically saying high debt in proportion to income indicates that you might have trouble paying the debt. And that is with anything. Renting, purchasing a vehicle, doing anything. If they see that the fact that what you have coming in, you're barely making ends meet with what you have, and then you go and apply for a loan, it's going to be kind of hard for you to get that. And if they do get that, and sometimes they're unscrupulous, they would charge astronomical interest rates. And so either way it goes, it does a disservice to you. So that's why it's so important that you get your debt to income ratio very much under control. High debt makes you vulnerable to unknowns. And beware of lengthy loan terms. We talked about that. Sometimes, a lot of us sometimes, oh, my payments is such and such, such. Yes, your payment may be very low, but the interest rate that you pay at the end of that loan is going to be really out there. So you want to look at all these type of things closely. And I want you to come back to these videos and look at them again, because we're moving on, and there's a lot of things you can glean from these videos. So we just want to really bring this knowledge for your benefit. Then you have housing expense to income ratios. Total monthly housing costs, gross income. Homeowners' monthly housing costs include, now this is just from the house alone. You have your principal payment, then you have your interest payment. You have property fees, property taxes, and then if you're a member of association, you have those fees. And I think neighborhood associations are really good. I really do. It helps each individual to keep up their property. It helps it to keep a beautification going forward in your community, and increases your property value. So if you're part of that association, if you're ready to sell, the fact that you've been part of the association, keeping the whole neighborhood looking good, it's going to benefit you. And I think it's one of the better things that you could have, is being a part of association. I know sometimes the fees are maybe a little high, but to benefit the whole community, they're not really bad. Renters' monthly housing costs includes rent, renter's insurance. A lot of people don't take that into account. Renter's insurance. You have to understand, when you're renting and your furniture and all these type of things, your appliances and all these type of things that you have there, these things are not covered by your renter. You know, I mean, in some cases it might be. So you have to look at having insurance for your personal property. Then there might be parking fees, there might be scheduled maintenance or amenity fees. And we talked about amenity fees earlier in our video. Now again, we have a monthly house expense, a monthly gross income. Okay, right here you have the house expense is $1,200, and your gross income is $4,000. So that's 0.3% of your income that you have to pay for your housing. So for instance, you have to pay another $1,000 for all the rest of your stuff. That shows that you're realizing a good amount to save and to have to live on. Okay. Total debt to income ratio. The same kind of situation here. Monthly debt expense, monthly gross income. The monthly debt expense is $1,700. That's 0.34%, 0.34%, and it's $5,000 is your monthly gross income. So let's look at obligated debt. Obligated debt means that this is something you got to pay. You have to pay this. And here's some examples of obligated debt. Mortgage or rent payment, credit cards, installment loans, car loans, student loans, consumer lines of credit, any other payment that shows up on your credit report. Okay. Now, someone asks, well, why do we want to include automobiles here? Well, we're not going to talk a whole lot about automobile expenses, things of that nature, but we feel that it's important if there's a young member of your family wanting to get ready to buy a vehicle, or you get ready to purchase one for your college-bound student, your high school students, or first-time driver. So we want you to kind of look at the expenses that it entails with automobiles. Costs involved in a vehicle purchase. A lot of times we don't look at the common purchase cost. We mainly think about the down payment, but there's the vehicle title, vehicle registration, vehicle documentation, and those sales tax. All these things, I'm sure a lot of us have made the purchase of a vehicle, and then when we start looking at the paperwork there, we see all these charges that we have incurred in buying this. And then you forget about your ongoing costs. You got your vehicle loan payment, look at the little calendar there, vehicle registration, then you got the insurance. If your child is young or whatever, it's going to be pretty high. And then, excuse me, then you have your maintenance and repairs. Then you have your gas. So there's a lot of ongoing costs in purchasing a vehicle. And I think a lot of times this doesn't come in play in the mindset when we initially buy a vehicle. So we want you to look at this closely to see all the ongoing costs and the common purchase costs in an automobile purchase, a vehicle purchase. Lease or purchase, rented a vehicle over a long term, no equity, no ownership, usually lower down payment and monthly payments, mileage restriction and potential excess wear charges, potential reacquisition fee. Mostly beneficial owners looking for a tax advantage. That is, we talked about that, leasing a vehicle. Lease or purchase. Purchase means you buy a vehicle to own. You own the vehicle outright when the loan is paid off. No mileage and wear restriction, but mileage and wear affect the vehicle's value. After you paid it off, when they look at the mileage and the wear on the vehicle, it's going to have an effect on you trading it in and selling it. So usually a high down payment and monthly payments when you purchase a vehicle. Best option for those looking to reduce their auto expense long term is to, I think, lease. That's what it said. Initiating a vehicle purchase. You might want to make sure you budget before buying. Sometimes individuals just go because they've going on feelings and they see something and their mind is just going because I see something, I love it, I like the way it looks, I like the tires and all these things. But you want to budget before buying. New cars lose. Now I want you to look at this really quiet, really fast, really closely. New cars lose 10 to 30% of their value immediately. Once you drive it off the parking lot, the value go down immensely. Use the 20-4-10 guideline. At least 2% down payment, no longer than 4 months financial terms. Payment no higher than 10% of your gross income. You don't want to be paying more for your car than you are for your house and you are for your savings. Then you want to evaluate financing options. Plan well in advance so you're not rushed into a decision. And car sellers are trained to not necessarily rush you to decision, but they're trained to close on a deal. So you have to be very careful about rushing into a decision. Okay? Factors in determining vehicle affordability. You look at the purchase price, you look at the monthly payment and interest rate if you finance it. You look at the cost to insure, fuel costs, and maintenance costs. Again, we're just going back over what we talked about. All these things you have to factor in prior to buying a vehicle. I'm sure you all have grandkids that have been so excited to buy a car, or their parents have bought them a car, and then they find out very quickly that it's going to cost gas to drive the car, it's going to cost this to do that, this to do that. And some of us grandparents, or sometimes we end up taking care of this, which we love our grandchildren. But at the same time, these are some of the things that you want to look at. And also, let this be a teachable moment to your grandchild to say, hey, now, everything comes with a cost. And so it's just a lot of factors that you have to look at and determine the vehicle affordability. Tips for buying a vehicle. For buying a vehicle, we talk about budgeting first. Consider the features you need. You might not, if you don't need a muscle car, you don't need all these upgraded computer, radios, tape it out. Just a lot of things you just don't need. Just consider that. Do your research on that vehicle. Like I said earlier, you got all kind of websites that you can put a VIN number in and research a vehicle. And sometimes you're encouraged to buy used, buy freely efficient. Shop around for the best financial terms. Ask about vehicle history and warranty terms. Again, negotiate, get insurance, and meet up on purpose. Man, this is so important. There's been so many cases of individuals, and most companies don't do it now. Most automobile companies don't do it now. But time back, they used to let you buy the vehicle prior to you getting insurance. And then sometimes, even though you buy insurance, you might not buy the right amount of insurance. And sometimes you go off the lot and something happens to these vehicles, you left with the payment, monthly payment, the terms that you agreed to. And so it's very important to get insurance immediately upon purchase. Now let's look at the major expenses in renting a home. We're getting close to the culmination of this video, and we really appreciate you staying with it, because it does us greatly to be able to bring these this service to you, because I consider this a service, because I want you to again have your finances under control so that you can live a more prosperous and a more happy and a more beneficial life. Now, let's look at major expenses as it relates to renting a home. Costs involved in renting a home. Housing expense should be no more than 30% of your gross income. Say you make $5,000. $1,550 should be the maximum amount that comes out of that $5,000. Then you have your rent, you have renter's insurance. Again, you have your parking and garage fee, any scheduled maintenance or amenity fees. So all these things, again, just a reminder, it involves in renting a home. Other monthly expenses associated with renting. You got your gas, electric, water, trash removal, cable, satellite, internet, security, appliance, maintenance. Then you have your upfront rental investment, first and last month's rent, and this is almost a given this time of day. You're going to have that first month and last month. In many cases, that might not be the case, but most times this is a given. And also, it's a given for security deposit. Then you're going to have additional upfront fees. You got to get your utilities set up. So if you're getting ready to get your help your child move out on their own, and they're getting ready to make their first apartment or home rental, all these things you have to look at. You have to look at the first and last month rent, security deposit, additional upfront fee, utility setup charges, moving costs, furniture and appliance costs. Be mindful of emotional purchases. Well, what is emotional purchase? Well, you're getting your first home, they're getting their first apartment, they're getting their first home, and they go out and buy some of the best looking furniture it is, and there is automatically an emotional purchase with a additional great deal amount of cost. So I know it's kind of hard these days that the terminology startup don't hardly exist anymore, but years gone by, most couples, most people would get a starter home to situate themselves. Now we understand that if your economic condition is real good, that you don't have to get a starter home, all well and good. But you do want to be mindful of purchasing anything based on emotions. Then you're going to have to look at, do you qualify to rent? Landlords look at several factors. So this is going to again help you prior to going out looking for a place to rent. Do you have enough money? Is your credit history real good? Is your credit score real good? Have you made your payments on time? Do you have a rental history? And criminal background. This has become a major thing in the past 10 to 15 years, criminal background. Years gone by, this was something that was hardly looked at. But now, because of the criminality of people, to sometimes take advantage of a landlord or renter, or sometimes have mischievous affairs going on in their life, all this type of stuff is being looked at now. Then you have pets. Sometimes it's not feasible for pets, so you have to look at all these type of things. You know, manage your finance well and staying out of trouble will help you qualify. Okay. Tips for finding a renter. Again, you want to budget. First, you want to ask your question: are you rent ready? Now, it sounds very uh, good, you know, initially going in, but when you have to start making these payments on a monthly basis, ask yourself: am I rent ready? Research your target location. You want to look at these locations. If you're going to live there, you want to make sure that you're going to look at the housing area. You want to look at the grocery stores. You want to look at the neighborhood. You want to look at a lot of things prior to purchasing. Decide again on the features you need. Locate a few options. Don't just settle on one. Look at two or three or four, and then kind of measure them against each other. Develop and practice your contact etiquette. How many landlords probably listening to me? And then someone came in and did not have the right mannerism, did not even have the right verbiage to talk about renting a home. So practice your contact etiquette. Read up on how to talk to a landlord, something of that matter. So, and when you be ready to this individual, well, okay, this person knows what they're talking about, and I believe they'll do well in my home or in my apartment. Inspect the property closely after you purchase, prior to purchasing. Inspect that property closely. Take photo series or videos. And most companies don't mind, most renters don't mind you doing this because they also have to make sure that they have everything up to par. And it's so important at this. Know what you're signing. Know what you're signing. And if it's your first time apartment or home, we really need to have somebody there with you who has an insight into what really goes into a property contract or something of that nature. Excuse me. If you're a good tenant, negotiate. We talked about that earlier. Okay, we have a few more minutes left in this video. The question you want to ask yourself: do I know the features I need? Do I have enough money for the upfront investments? Do I have furniture, bedding, and equipment? All this stuff you ask yourself, man. You know, I'm going to buy this house, this apartment. Do I have all these things I'm going to need to have? Can I pay the rent without a single late payment? All this going through your mind, and it's so important that you look at these questions closely. All this is going through your mind, and it should be going through your mind prior to you even trying to buy a home or rent an apartment or a home. So, do I have references and proof of income? Can I deal appropriately with landlords and agents? Do I understand tenant rights and responsibility? There's tenant rights and there's responsibility. Can I fill out a condition report accurately and fully? Can I keep good records? Can I manage household tasks? Can I get along with neighbors? A lot of us probably have had our children to go and rent an apartment or home, and we find out a lot of these questions they're very lacking in. So these are some of the things that, as a parent, you might want to look at closely along with your child, to talk with your young adult, anyone in your family for that matter that's going to try to go and rent an apartment or home. Ask themselves these questions, and they're major and they're very good questions. Then you have home ownership budgeting, and then this is going to be our last portion of our video. Again, I really appreciate you listening, and we exceeded a little bit, and we don't really feel bad about going this long because our goal is to help, and so if it takes a good period of time to help you, that's what we're going to do. Home ownership budgeting, and we really want you to listen to these videos and look at these videos, extended amount of time, the whole video, because you really can miss out on a lot of pertinent information if you don't. Okay? Home ownership budgeting. Budget before buying. 3 key areas of real estate ownership. The initial purchase cost, we talked about that. Ongoing monthly expenses associated with selling. After you purchase your home, you want to sell it. There's expenses associated with that also. Initial cost to purchase home. We've talked about this: down payment, loan costs, initial mortgage payment, and that initial, if I can get this word out, the initial mortgage payment comes much sooner than you think. Just like an automobile payment. Escrow, property tax, and insurance. Moving expenses. Something that maybe nobody thinks about. How much it's going to cost me to move to this house or move to this apartment. Now, these are ongoing expenses. Now, we talk about the ongoing expenses with the automobile. These are the ongoing expenses of home ownership. Just a few of them. Of course, your monthly mortgage payment, you got to pay that. Private mortgage insurance, you got to pay that. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, association dues, maintenance costs. So all this should be figured in prior to us even start looking for a home. And I think this is very important because it gives us insight into the structure features of a home and some of the things that we have, and lets us know how long that they normally last. Now, these are estimates. You're talking about the roof lasting 20 or 30 years. You might live in a certain part of the country where it rains a lot. Well, it tears down the shingles a lot. You might live in a part of the country where it's warmer a lot and it cracks the shingles or whatever. So these are just estimates. You have to look at your roofing and everything on your own, but roughly 20 to 30 years. You have shingles, 20-year shingles and stuff like that. But not only the shingles, you're looking at the plywood, all the other things that goes in it. So there are going to be major expenses. Then you got your flooring. Your carpet lasts 8 to 10 years. Sometimes you just quote how much traffic is on it. Linoleum, vinyl, marble, slate, or granite. It's just giving estimates right here. And then your outdoor decks. Again, that's about whether it rains a lot. Do you have termite infestation? So it's just a whole lot of things that goes into it. All these things you just want to realize it's going to happen. These expenses and structural features are going to happen on your major appliances and structures. Life expectancy of major appliances and structural features. A lot of times we get our central heating, and sometimes we might think it's going to last forever, but the average right here says 17 years. Central air conditioner, 15 years. Stove, 20 years. Your refrigerator, 11 years. Clothes dryer, 12 years. Clothes washer, 9 years. Dishwasher, 9 years. The years seem like they're very lengthy, but all in all, they're not that lengthy. So you have to prepare yourself. And then these major purchases, a central unit, sometimes $5,000, $6,000, $10,000, $20,000. Stove is pretty high, so you have to already set in mind a plan in place to be able to take care of these things. Clothes dryers, these things run in the $500,000. So all this stuff you really need to take in consideration when you're making your purchase. Okay, and this is going to be our last part of our video. When you get ready to sell, look at your selling expenses, your closing costs, repair required to sell. That means you're going to make sure your house don't have any water damage. Make sure there's no roofing issue. Make sure that no mold, and particularly no mold. Mold can shut down a lot of sales, and you shouldn't want to live in a house with mold, and you definitely shouldn't want to sell a house with mold in it. Then again, the moving expenses if you're purchasing. So we thank you for kindly listening to our video, and we really appreciate it, and we really feel very positive that we brought some pertinent knowledge to you. And like we said, our goal is to make your financial life easy, and we want to make sure that you have the stability and have the literacy as it relates to financial matters. And our goal is to bring this great knowledge we feel that is great to you and to add value to you and your household. Again, this is Winfred Crutcher. I appreciate you bearing with us. No, you didn't bear with us. It was a pleasure on my part, and I'm hoping it was a pleasure on your part to listen to this, because everything we're bringing is for your benefit. Again, this is Winfred Crutcher with the Crutcher Financial Group. We thank you so much for listening. Again, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. We wish you a great and fantastic day, and God bless you, and thank you for listening. We'll see you again with upcoming videos as we continue to grow our YouTube channel, Crutcher Financial. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and have a tremendous evening.